Hello and welcome to the Record Celtic podcast. My name is Daniel Caw and I'm delighted to be joined by Record Sports, Michael Gannon and Keith Jackson. Guys, how are you?
Very well, Daniel. Mick, you?
Not bad, chaps, yeah. Not too bad. Can't complain.
We've had a few technical problems there getting set up, but we're now up and running. You could say the same, Keith, about Celtic.
Yes.
Perfect segue.
I see what you did there.
When we spoke last week, Celtic were going into the Motherwell game, must win, had to kind of prove a point. You could argue they did that in both games, really.
I think what we said was that Celtic really desperately needed a response at Motherwell. The worry would be that for 45 minutes, none was forthcoming. It was a really, it was actually a pretty woeful first 45 minutes. But when push came to shove at half time, I think there was a few words spoken between the players. Alistair Johnson, I was speaking to him the other day about it, and he said, look, at half time we just realised we had to have an effort mentality in the second half, and he's right, because they were staring at a crisis, dead in the eye. They had 45 minutes to dig themselves out of a hole, and you know what? They showed the character. And by the way, it's worth pointing out here, because you've been getting a lot of stick this season. Brendan Rodgers made a massive call at half time at Fir Park when he took off Kyogo and he put Adam Idah up front, and that was a game changer as well. And had it not come off, had Idah missed a couple of sitters, he would have been blamed for taking Kyogo off. It was all big stakes, high stakes, but Celtic came through it. They came through it impressively. And then, last night at Celtic Park, they absolutely steamrolled Dundee. Mm-hmm. And it does start to feel, is this the start of something? Is this the change in momentum? Is this the sort of reconnection between the team and the supporters, which has been missing for so long, between the manager and the supporters, between the manager and these players? I think it's too early to reach any conclusions, or to say that's it, the corner's been turned and there's not going to be any more slip-ups along the way. But Brendan Rodgers said before the Dundee game that he was taking it on a game-by-game basis, which is, managerial speak. But I'm fairly convinced that deep down he knows they needed to rattle off 5 successive wins before they go to Rangers. That's 2 down, 3 more to go. And I wouldn't jump to any conclusions until, the next 3 games, the next 3 results. If Celtic can head to Ibrox with 5 straight wins in the back pocket, then I think at that point you're looking at it going, well, this is now looking like a serious turnaround in the season.
Mm-hmm. And just before we go into the Dundee game, Mick, I do think Keith makes a good point about certainly not the first half, but the second half at Fir Park. It felt, to me anyway, a bit more like Ange's Celtic. It felt like Celtic were back in a way. Something that maybe clicked. They'd maybe the realisation that if they go 5 points behind, they might not be come back from it.
Well, it did look a bit like the shackles coming off, didn't it, a wee bit? Listen, you can't get the fact the first half at Fir Park was so bad. I mean, it was as bad as anything we've seen this season. So the alarm bells were ringing loud and clear at that point in time. So it did feel like a kind of effort moment, as Johnson said, and the shackles come off, and it continued against Dundee. I think that performance against Dundee was needed. I think Celtic fans needed that, because there's been a kind of distinct lack of entertainment a lot this season, especially at Celtic Park. Strangely, there have been some decent days. In Aberdeen, 6-0 when the goals came on late. I think they beat Hibs 4-1, 4-0, 4-1. That was a good performance. But there have been too few and far between them. Too many home games have been a real slog, a bit of a dredge. And I think if last night had been another one of those kind of 1-0 wins, about a few panicky moments, I think there've been probably more disgruntled punters. So they needed something to get people on their feet and get a bit excited, and they got that last night. And they've got a bit of momentum now in the back of the second half at Fir Park and this result midweek. But they need to keep it going. They've got a really, really tough game this weekend at Hearts. I still got my reservations about the side. I think Rodgers has kind of found a formula that looks as though it's starting to work. But I think a lot of times he's been reaching in the dark for things to make it happen. There's been players that have came and gone this season, runs of games, and then fell out of the team and back in. Now you've got Idah leading the line, you've got Yang out on the wing as well, looking good last night. It seems to have found something, but they need to continue. And this weekend is absolutely massive. I mean, going to Tynecastle against a good Hearts team that are probably a bit bruised with the kind of defeat at Rangers, having been gone there unbeaten after much long time. It's a real test, and it's a week-to-week thing for Celtic just now. I mean, it's and listen, a good result like that does help. But Celtic have always got the ability to beat teams 4, 5, 6, and 7. Even in their poor times, they can do that. I mean, in the COVID season, they did 3 5s and a 6 that season as well. And that was meant to be a complete disaster season. So they can do it when these chances go in the back of the net. They need to do it over a longer period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of things there. First of all, Michael, I was at Celtic Park and it felt so flat ahead of the game for obvious reasons, right? There is a disconnect there. It's not been going well. Rangers have grabbed momentum. They don't like it. And, you know, the light show went on and they tried to sort of engineer an atmosphere and, you know, they were singing "You'll Never Walk Alone" as they do before kick-off. But it felt all a bit limp, half-hearted. The "You'll Never Walk Alone" anthem was still going on in the first 60 seconds of the match. And at that point, Dundee had 2 shots and a half-hearted penalty claim. And you could just feel the energy, just whatever energy there was, it just got up and left and walked out. And you thought, oh, this could be a long night. But then, you know, Celtic got the opening goal. And that, you know, the fact that it was Carter Vickers that scored that I think helped because, you know, the return of the long lost son there. And, you know, that sent out a message. That was almost like a little sort of sideshow, the fact that he was back and he'd scored the opener, and that lifted things a little bit. And then news came through of Rangers falling behind at Rugby Park, and the whole place just lifted. It was like an adrenaline shot. And it, you know, for the rest of that first half, the place was alive again, and it's the first time I felt like that in a long while. And you know, then you mentioned the individuals. Yang, I thought he was my man of the match. I thought he was terrific. He was at the heart of most things that Celtic did well going forward. He was a threat. He was getting to the down the sides. He was cutting inside. Decent deliveries, good cutbacks, really good. But Yang, for me, sums up Celtic this season in his ability to blow hot and cold. So that is the question. Can he go to Tynecastle and put on a repeat performance? Because I've not seen anything to suggest this far this season that he is going to turn it on, you know, 4 weeks out of 5, 6 weeks out of 7. So again, as you said, week by week, game by game is how Celtic need to be judged at the minute.
It's interesting seeing so many goals from headers from Celtic. I mean, that's something I've not seen all season. Balls getting thrown into the box early. And I think that it's interesting now the front line with Idah up there rather than Kyogo.
There's no point in putting in a cross for, you know, if it's Kyogo up against two big centres.
That's what I mean, yeah. So what they can do is, because Idah's up there leading the line, they don't have to. They can throw a ball in there early. I mean, they don't have to. I mean, the problem all season has been this slow build-up play. The ball's going out wide. The wingers can inside, looking up, looking for that wee direct low ball in to try and find Kyogo, and they're getting bogged down and big against defences. Whereas Idah up front, they can just get the ball at their feet and whip it in. I mean, there's a lot of early balls. You know, Alistair Johnson, up until about a week ago, hadn't an assist all season.
Yeah,
all of a sudden throwing balls at the box last night, and creating goals.
The cross for Idah's header was a terrific cross as well. But you know,
need more of that. They need more of that. But that's a different way of playing than it has been all season.
Absolutely. However, that all said, Brendan Rodgers did sit down with a few of us on the Tuesday afternoon after his press conference, and he showed some video clips of goals scored under Ange the previous season and goals that Celtic have scored this season. It is incredible, in fairness to him, how similar they are in terms of fullback coming in the field, opening up enough space for a ball to get played down the side for a winger, cross to come in, 3 guys attacking, 1 at the front post, 1 at the back post, 1 in the middle. And he showed 4 goals that were almost identical over the 2 seasons. And I think that, you know, Obviously, I think that he was a little bit bruised, or has been a little bit bruised by, accusations that, his football's not as exciting to watch as Ange's football, etc., etc. But when you actually looked at those clips, it was extraordinary how similar the movements were. And I think you then come down to a question mark of what's the difference? The difference, you would have to say, and it's not, it's not something that Brendan hasn't said throughout the course of the season, about the quality of the individuals within the system. Well, once you had Jota and Abada, now you don't. And I think another key component in all of that is Carter Vickers coming back into the side. Mm-hmm. Because Motherwell, again, let's go to that game. How many times did Motherwell get down the side of the centre-backs? Just long balls over the top, and Theo Bair was able to muscle his way through and create a situation where Celtic were having to defend deep inside their own half, at their own penalty box, guys having to flood back. As soon as Carter Vickers came on at Fir Park, he snuffed Theo Bair out on the halfway line. There was no need for Celtic to come scuttling back into position defensively, because Carter Vickers had the reading of it, the ability to get there first, and then the physical strength to deal with Theo Bair, take the ball off him 5 yards inside Celtic's half, and then start another attack from there, as opposed to the whole team having to filter back to defend the situation. They're now starting their attacks from 40, 50 yards further up the pitch. I think that is key, and I don't think it should be underestimated just how important Carter Vickers is to what Celtic achieved under Ange Postecoglou and what Rodgers is trying to achieve between now and the end of the season.
I think, Mick, to be fair, as we were saying just before we come on here, that Carter Vickers, I think, stops situations before they become situations, if that makes sense. And he's not played in a Celtic defeat since 2021, which is remarkable, really. I know he's had spells of injured, but it is night and day without him in the Celtic team. It really is.
Oh, listen, Celtic's hopes for the rest of this season, I'm not saying they hang solely on his shoulders, but a large percentage does. Him staying fit for the rest of the season is absolutely vital for Celtic. Crucial. And if they want to go and wrestle this title away from Rangers, who are top of the league at the moment. So that is going to be a slightly nervous situation for Celtic, because if they lose him again, they've got a big problem. And as you touched on it, the first half an hour at Fir Park, Celtic were getting torn apart at the back. I mean, simple ball in behind that channel was causing mayhem. And that did get plugged. But not only that, I think that the build-up play as well, Carter Vickers with the ball at his feet, he's confident, he can stride forward and pick a pass. Whereas I think that a lot of the other guys that are in that part of the team get a wee bit cautious, safety first, pass to each other, back and forward, take the easier option rather than the proper option, and it slows the whole game down, allows defences to settle, and it dictates that play that we've seen a lot this season, that kind of bogged down, back and forward, square balls, and it's easy to defend against. Whereas Carter Vickers got a bit more impetus with the ball at his feet as well. So he is absolutely crucial that he's wrapped in cotton wool for the rest of the season for Celtic.
So for me, it's the old adage, you can talk about systems and managers and tactics and formations and strategies and Angeball and Brodgeball, or whatever you want to call it, right? That's fine, all well and good in theory, but it's the player, the quality of the player within the system, which will determine how that system looks and what your strategy looks like, and how successful you are as a football team. It all comes down to quality in the end. The best system in the world can be made better by a better quality of player. Andrew's done that at Spurs. And I think that, a lot of judgments been made in Brendan Rodgers, but when you look at the key components of the Postecoglou starting 11 compared to what Brendan Rodgers has had so far this season, you can see why there would be a drop-off. The quality of the individual player within the system has not been as high. Carter Vickers coming back makes a massive difference to them.
And Keith, do you see, just going back to Adam Idah, a moment ago you mentioned him, this was a guy that was held up by Celtic fans as, look, this is the lack of investment. We've got this guy and couldn't get a game for Norwich. He's been brilliant so far, 5 goals in 5 games. And I would even suggest, I don't know where Celtic would be without him, to be honest, in the last few weeks.
Yeah, well, his goals have kept it ticking along, haven't it? He's pulled them out of fire a couple of times. At Easter Road and again at Fir Park. Great header again last night. I like the look of him. I'm not saying that he is the quality centre forward that I think Celtic fans had been hoping for. But he's not far off. You know, he's got a talent. He's physical. He's pacey. He's terrific in the air. Looks to have a good mentality in terms of determination to get out there and play. At times you might look at Kyogo this season and wonder how happy he is out there. Is his body language good? Is he not enjoying himself the way that he used to? Is it not quite lighting his fire the way it did under Ange Postecoglou? I don't know, but Idah looks as if he wants to be out there and is enjoying being part of it and is enjoying the responsibility and the intensity. Look, I think it's not unfair for Celtic fans to say, wait a minute, the third best striker at Norwich, is that really all that we can deliver here? But I think one of the key parts of this, when it came down to his recruitment, was Brendan Rodgers was handed a list from the recruitment department of available players, and he went straight to Idah's name. So I like him. So he had a personal knowledge of him, which differs from maybe some of the other guys that have been brought in. But Rodgers went to some lengths to say that when that list got handed to him, Idah's name jumped out. So yes, it did feel all very 11th hour, and you know, maybe if Norwich hadn't made their move to get Pierre Van Hooydonk's son, who was supposed to be a long-term target for Celtic, then the move might never have transpired. But it did. I just think it's interesting and worthy of noting that was a name that Rodgers selected from the list, as opposed to, you know, just being handed somebody, you know, who he didn't have great prior knowledge of. He liked Idah from the start, and you're starting to see why.
Right. And Mick, see, just on Kyogo, I mean, is it as simple as, you know, this Celtic team has lost Abada, it's lost Jota, even Hatate this for big spells, Aramoy as well, I thought was brilliant last season. Is it just simple that he's not getting the same service, or is there a wee bit more to it, do you think?
No, he's definitely not getting the same service. I mean, I've got a lot of sympathy for Kyogo. If you watch him in a lot of games this season, he is having to run about blind alleys, and he's not getting the service. It's as simple as that. The wide men at Celtic and the fullbacks haven't been delivering the goods most of the season. So his frustration is hardly able to hide it at times. He's having to run and look for the ball in areas he doesn't want to be either. So yeah, I think he's been a victim of lack of quality in other areas and consistency in those areas as well this season. He's also is kind of a bit of injury as well, and I think that's been kind of hanging over him all season, and it's a bit of a concern as well. But for whatever reason, he had 2 great seasons. It's not quite clicked. He's still a guy that can produce the goods in big moments. We've seen it in the games against Rangers, especially against the better teams with a bit more space. He can still deliver in these big moments. So I think he's got. I wouldn't just be chuck him in the bin at this stage of the season. I think Idah has grabbed his chance big time. Surprised everybody. I mean, people we speak to at Norwich are also surprised that he started so well. So he's given Celtic a different dynamic, and he has changed the kind of the mood around the place. Kyogo, a wee break might not do him any harm. I still think he's got a big part to play the rest of the season. He's a quality player who delivers when it matters, and I don't think you discard that too easily.
Am I wrong though, guys? You can tell me that, you know, in the couple of seasons under Ange, at the end of the game, he made this big deal of going and doing his little dance in front of the fans and all that, and I think he felt at that point as if I'm the most important guy in this place, and I think he relished it, and I think he flourished on it. Am I wrong in saying I'm not seeing that same guy after games now? And is he putting himself out there and connecting the way that he was previously? Does that hint at something's not quite right for him? He's not as happy as he was. I don't know. I think there's something in that. He doesn't seem. He's not the same player. I'm not sure it's the same person.
He's naturally an introverted kind of character, right enough. I mean, he started talking about dancing and all that stuff. He had to get dragged up to do that at first. It was Joe Hart chucked him in front of the fans at the start to do that. Once he started doing it, he got a bit...
Mick, nobody needed to hold him back for the rest of it.
Well, once he got a taste for it, he was quite enjoying it. It's a bit like myself in a dance floor. A bit reluctant at first, but once I'm up there, I love it.
Yeah, but that requires 8 pints first.
That's true. not got the moves right enough. But
we'll be the judge of that.
He's not scoring the same amount of goals, so he maybe not feeling as though he's contributing or deserves the adulation as much as he would had previously. And he is. I'm not saying that it's a hard guy to get to know, but it does seem like a naturally quite a quiet wee chap. And this year, maybe he's a wee knock of confidence because the goals haven't been flowing as much. But I still think he's got a huge part to play.
Listen, I don't disagree with you. And as you said, he's a specialist in Derby Day. And there's
that's the thing. It's going to be
Derby days to come.
If Idah plays in the team now and keeps it going the way he's going, scoring a few goals, it'd be really interesting to get to Ibrox. Who gets the nod? Really interesting, because he has been, terrific against Rangers. With a bit more space, especially going to Ibrox, you think that's going to be a major call when it comes. But there's a lot of games to play the ball in.
I'm looking at it and I'm not convinced that, I know that Iwata came in at Fir Park from nowhere, by the way, which you mentioned earlier, Mick, was a sign of a manager who's reaching around trying to find a problem to fix.
He was injured right enough. He had an injury right enough for a while.
But
he's not played an awful lot.
Listen, he came in at Motherwell, he did nothing for 45 minutes. If anything, all he did was throw out the balance of the midfield, because I don't think Celtic get the best out of Callum McGregor when he's not.
Yeah, I don't agree. I thought he played well at Motherwell. I thought he played pretty well.
No, he did. I thought the game passed him by for 45 minutes. Came into it a little bit in the second half.
The fans booed him getting taken off.
The fans were booing Brendan Rodgers at that point, Mike. The fans were booing anything because at that point
it took off a defensive midfield player for an attack midfield, and he get booed for it. I thought
that was ridiculous. That was a ridiculous overreaction from myself.
It was another silly booing. We've seen quite a lot of silly booing this season.
Yeah, as Brendan Rodgers has said at one point during the season, I know what they're booing me, and that's exactly what that was. Iwata hadn't done enough to constitute the manager getting jeered for making a substitution. It just wasn't the case. But in Brendan Rodgers' eyes, he did enough to stay in the team and stay in that position for last night. Again, he did fine. He did, But I'm not sure that he's the answer. And I wonder if you look at it, instead of having him there, put McGregor back into that position, allow O'Reilly a little bit more freedom to go and do what he does further up the pitch, but also bring Kyogo into that and try again with Idah up front and Kyogo roving around and behind him. I think that might be the best system, and I wonder if that's what Brendan Rodgers will have in mind for Ibrox.
I think there's a player in Iwata. I think there's a player there. I think it's a really intelligent, cool customer in there with the ball at his feet. I think there's a player in Iwata. I think it's been hard for him. I think Scottish football has been a bit of a culture shock for him. I think it's a really versatile operator in there. I think he could do a real good job in there. I think he was the Japanese player of the year before he arrived, and I think he has not quite found his feet in Scotland, but I think there's definitely a player there. You could listen. I've seen guys in the past in that role who've been talked about, been prospects. I remember Kouassi was bought for a lot of money as the new Scott Brown. Didn't quite work out. Ismaili Soro, remember him? Another one. The new Scott Brown and all that stuff. I don't think Iwata is the new Scott Brown or the new Callum McGregor or whatever. But I think he could be a valuable player, given a good bit of time in the team. The thing is that, like you say, at this point in the season, there's no time for kind of experimenting or guys getting off the boil. So it'll be interesting to see if he stays there. I think Callum McGregor is effective far up the pitch. I've always kind of thought that.
Callum McGregor's effective whatever you play Callum McGregor, because he just is. But I wonder if it's to the detriment of the side to have a guy that I think is less talented than Callum McGregor being the guy that everything's going through.
The problem isn't that. The problem is, who do you play in the further position alongside O'Reilly? Because Bernardo, for me, hasn't done enough this season. 3 or 4 good games at Christmas isn't enough. So who do you play up there along with O'Reilly as a kind of second attacking midfield player?
That's what you said, Kyogo. Listening.
And there, middle of the park.
Well, no, just behind Idah. And that would allow O'Reilly to even more license to drift a little bit. And in a number 10 role with Kyogo just on a little bit.
See, I think you need the legs that McGregor and Riley bring, because those positions are really hard positions in that Celtic team, because they're the ones that lead in the press. They have to kind of hit the byline at times as well and getting the ball. I think that's a position for a Callum McGregor.
You saying Kyogo's not got legs?
No, I think he's further up the pitch. I think he's got to play either off the front or up front. I don't think he plays in that kind of 8 role.
No, it'd be further advanced. I just think that Celtic might get more out of a combination of those three than with Iwata. And granted, I hear what you're saying. Technically, it looks fine and all that. But
if you're going to put McGregor, O'Reilly, and Kyogo as your 3 in behind the front 3, you're going to be under a lot of pressure in the middle of the park, because Kyogo's not going to be chasing down and winning tackles in the first line of the press. That's just not going to happen. So you're giving up the midfield.
No, I'd say that what you've got in Kyogo's a guy that is happy to go out and run and press fullbacks and centre halves. I mean, he's done that for 2 years. His energy levels in pressing people and closing people down is off the chart.
No, I think chasing down centre halves and getting to lump it is slightly different than fighting in the engine room for the ball. I think that's different. I think that's why Paulo Bernardo struggles, because he's not got the physicality either, whereas McGregor's got it. I just think that in the big games that'd be very dangerous. Him in that kind of. I think McGregor can play anywhere, like you say, anywhere on the pitch, and he'll win tackles, he'll make passes, and he'll.
But Mick, let's break this down, because you asked the question. It's going to be really interesting if Idah stays in the team and continues to do well and score goals. Do you just leave Kyogo out, or do you find a way to get Kyogo in because you know what he can do in these games?
I think at this point in time, you have to go with the guy in form, who's Idah, and who's changed the way the team are playing. As I said, we're talking about earlier on, whipping balls into the box, and you need to stick with that. And Kyogo's got to be an impact player from the bench at this point in time. That's
interesting, because Celtic's way of playing seems to be working fine, or has worked fine against Rangers. In fact, there's a counter argument to that, which is, well, Rangers at Kilmarnock last night.
I agree. But
many crosses that they have to defend, they can do it. Golson will stick his head on anything.
Yeah, no, that's goes back to what we're saying. That's going to be a big call for Ibrox. But I think in the meantime, to get to Ibrox, Celtic have to win every game before then. And I don't think they should change
that, Michael.
I don't think they should change in what they've got at the moment to risk that until they get there. Then they've got a big decision.
See, just while we're going around the houses, guys, I know we've talked it to death, but do we just accept that Abada's played his last game for Celtic? Is he just completely out the picture now, do you think?
Yeah, I think there's no way back. There's no way back. And it's a real shame, and I feel absolutely desperately sorry for the boy, because he shouldn't be in this position. It's actually a disgrace. But I don't see any conceivable way in which it's going to be possible for him to wear that shirt again. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, there is obviously a section of the Celtic support that feel that their political views are more important than anything else, and that's fine, sense of entitlement, etc., etc. But they have destroyed a really promising career, Celtic career. Because Liel Abada will go and have a career. Don't worry about that.
He's a good player.
It just won't be Celtic.
No. And see, just before we finish, guys, I realise I'm asking how long's a piece of string, but we've mentioned Tynecastle at the weekend. Mick, do you think Celtic will come out with a win?
See, this is the thing. I wouldn't be going to the bookies to put £1 on it, because we don't know what Celtic team are going to turn up. If they turn up, then they go and get 3 points. But Hearts are a good side, so this is why it's such a huge challenge for Celtic. It still looks a real treacherous trip. Hearts, I've seen a lot of Hearts this season that I've been kind of impressed with them. Just a good side. I mean, I know they completely wet the bed at Ibrox, but that might also add another dimension to their motivation for Sunday. So yes, a real tricky one. If they can get through it, it'll be a huge result.
What do you think, Keith?
I think it's very similar to the challenge that Rangers had at Kilmarnock last night. They're probably the two away grounds outside the city boundaries of Glasgow where you wouldn't really want to be going right now at this stage in the season with so much on the line. It's Rugby Park and Tynecastle. Hearts are capable of blowing hot and cold, but I think in front of their own fans, particularly when Celtic come to town, they get right up for it. The fans get up for it. It's a great atmosphere. It becomes can become a frantic sort of a contest. I fully expect that this weekend. The same way as Rangers were pushed to come up with answers at Kilmarnock on Wednesday night, I expect Celtic to be faced with a similar challenge. we've also seen occasions, by the way, where you think that's what you're going to get, and then Celtic could go there and get an early goal and then romp it. That's been done before as well. I rather suspect it's going to be tight, and I think Mick's right. I think if Celtic can find a way of getting back across the M8 with 3 points, then, you know, it's, again, another building block in terms of momentum. But I again, like Michael, I wouldn't like to predict it at this point. You've no way of knowing what Hearts side is going to turn up or what Celtic side turns up. And then once they do turn up, it's the little moments within the game. Do Hearts get off to a flyer? If so, that becomes a really tricky afternoon. If Celtic can get the first goal, they might calm everyone down and control the match. But at this point in time, I wouldn't want to call it. I'd call it close at the time, or maybe even after 10 minutes.
After 90.
I can't wait to go back. Whatever happens, we'll be back next week on the Record Celtic podcast with all the fallout from it. Guys, it's been a pleasure. Keith, Mick, thanks very much.
Cheers, lads.
So, chat's away to find and see if that Shankland's pie still there. I'm getting a bit peckish.
Thanks very much for listening, and we'll be back next week. Cheers.